Hey everybody, how's it going? Hoping you are having an awesome day today. We are going to be continuing our series on the 10 Commandments of digital missions. I've hoped that so far, even in the first video already, that you've been challenged to broaden your perspective of really what church ministry could look like and how we can leverage social media to make a difference in the world out there. I'm interested in hearing if you have any thoughts or questions or comments on anything else. You can definitely comment below these videos and I'll do my best to respond to any of these. By the way, if you do have questions and you want to reach out to me personally, you could certainly do so at justin@thatchristianvlogger.com. I'd be happy to receive any emails from you guys and to answer any questions. But today we're going to be talking about commandment number 2, and it's usually the first question that people ask when it comes to building a social media platform, and I figured we'd start off with this one. And commandment number 2 is this: thou shalt not have gas. It's a phrase that my friend taught me, GAS, which stands for Gear Acquirement Syndrome. Whenever somebody wants to start a YouTube platform or a podcast or any kind of a thing, like they're going to live stream their church service or whatever the case is, usually one of the very first series of questions that people ask is, what camera should I buy? What microphone should I purchase? What kind of lights should I be having in order to make sure that my quality is good? And then, what kind of software do I need? And the good news is that, if you don't have a huge budget, there still are solutions for you guys. It's interesting that a lot of people ask this question towards the beginning. It's one of the first questions they ask, and I get it. Those were the questions that I asked myself as well when I first started. But these really are not the most important questions to ask, even though they're the first questions most people ask. Especially if you're not an expert on this, it can be overwhelming to know what type of, lenses do I purchase, what kind of microphones do I get, and things like that. But the reality is that you don't have to be not only do you not have to be an expert on this subject, you also don't have to necessarily have the highest budget in order to get started. I told you a little bit about my story a couple years ago. When I first got started, I was living in Philadelphia. I basically had a $0 budget. I had to finance everything myself, and my wife and I were not necessarily in a great financial spot at the time, still paying off college student loans and things of that nature. So we really tried to be economical as we moved along the way. We were living in Philadelphia in a tiny, tiny apartment. It was rat infested. There was all kinds of problems. And yet, even with all those challenges, we were able to get started, which is the most important thing. You don't let this kind of you're scared of what gear do I get? I don't have all the answers. Don't allow that to paralyze you. You just need to get started and continue to grow and learn as you go. When I first got started, I'll throw a photo up on the screen. When I first got started, my house was a mess, but I cleared off a little space. So on camera, at least it looked good. Didn't really have a studio. And I think those lights I purchased at Home Depot, they were less than like $100. And so I got really started with like the cheapest stuff that I could possibly find. And so in this video, I'm actually going to give you 3 different recommendations as far as like a gear list. We're going to do like a lower budget, a medium budget, and then a higher budget. So each of your needs depend on really your budget. What can you afford to spend? There are cheaper ways to do it where you can spend a very little amount of money. And there are, of course, ways that you can indulge. And over the years, I've slowly but surely upgraded my equipment set so that I can have a nicer picture, a nicer audio, nicer lighting, all that kind of stuff. But it's not necessary to get started. The most important thing is simply that you just get started. And so I don't want this to stop us from moving forward, but let's go and handle this. Let's get it done, and hopefully you will know what you need to know. So let's start off with the lower budget option. What are you going to do? We're going to look at 4 pieces of gear, of equipment at each of the levels of the low, medium, and high. We're going to be looking at a camera suggestion, a lighting suggestion, an audio suggestion, and an editing suggestion. Each of these are all very, very good, and each of them have a different value. And there's kind of like what's called a diminishing return on investments. Obviously, when you spend more money, you're gonna get a better quality. But the more that you spend, it's gonna get less and less of an improvement. But so different things to consider. Let's start off with the lower budget. Lower budget budget as far as your camera. Simply start with the camera that you have. Most people already have an iPhone or an Android of some type. If your phone is current within at least the last 12 months or so, your camera is pretty much good enough to get going. Your quality of many cameras nowadays can shoot 4K video. They can get great pictures if the lighting is optimal. So I would suggest, if you don't have a budget, just use the camera that you have to start off with. Or if you want to really to invest in at least a dedicated camera, so all your footage doesn't have to get stored up on your phone, one great and cheap suggestion is a Canon G7X. It'll be right here on the screen. And this is actually the camera that I got started off with. It's relatively cheap nowadays. You can buy them used or refurbished for just a few $100s. Really great way to start. As far as lighting is concerned, I would really suggest that you do what I started off with. And I started off with Home Depot lights. I got a couple, I think I got 3 floodlights, and in total with the light stand and the lighting, I spent less than $100. Just make sure you get the kind of bulbs that all match together so the lighting is equal. And then to diffuse those, I simply just attached wax paper over the floodlight, and that's what I used. As far as audio is concerned, there are 2 different ways that you can go. There are a lot of cheap wired lapel mics that you could use. If you're using your iPhone, you can connect your wired lapel all the way into your computer, or sorry, into your phone. Let it run all across the floor, tuck it into the inside of your shirt, and use a lapel. That's one way you can do it if you're shooting off this phone or any other smartphone, that is. If you're going to be using the G7X, there is no microphone input, so a cheap alternative is something called the Zoom H1N. It's a little external recorder. You can record audio off of that. You can even connect a wired lapel to that as well. And then you just have to synchronize the audio in your post-production. And there are 1,000,001 tutorials on how to do that. It's not very difficult, so you don't have to stress out about that. As far as editing software, depending if you're using a Mac or if you're using a Windows solution, there are free software, and the software is still quite good. You can use either iMovie or Windows Movie Maker. In fact, if you don't even have a computer, you can still do this. One of my the people that works on my team to help me with video editing as an intern, she was in high school. She was running her own YouTube channel, shooting off of a cheap little phone, sometimes an external camera, but literally editing the software, editing the footage all on her phone. And iMovie on your phone is free. And so there's a lot of really cheap ways you can get going. For the lower budget, you can basically look at spending right around $500 or less, and you can have lighting, you can have software, you can have microphones, you can have a camera, and you're set to go. What about our medium budget, our kind of mid-range budgets? The camera that I would suggest is either one of 2 cameras. The first camera is a Canon 70D, and the second camera is a Sony 6300. Either one of those cameras really work very well. The nice thing about a Canon 70D that's different than the Sony camera is it actually has one of those flip out screens, so you can actually see yourself when you're filming. You can frame a little bit easier that way. Both cameras are very good, and you're going to be spending somewhere in the realm of about a little bit less than about $1,000 for that. As far as microphones, what would I suggest? A really great microphone that I like actually using quite a bit is this one right here. This is the Rode Micro. And it has this little fuzzy thing on here. It helps protect from wind. If you've ever shot video outside on your phone or something and it was a windy day, you know how it sounds really terrible. It sounds horrible. This little fuzzy thing allows you to get cleaner audio. And this microphone, I want to say it was less than $100. So it's very, very affordable, and the quality is still very good. In fact, even some of the videos that I shoot today, even though I have other microphones, lapels, other shotgun mics, I actually still use this one simply because it's the most convenient microphone out of all the ones that I use. As far as lighting is concerned, you could do something that's called the newer ring light. If you've ever seen videos on YouTube where they have like the rings, little circles on their eyeballs or on their glasses, this is because of a ring light. The ring light is a very travel-friendly way to get a good, even lighting. It's not going to be the best lighting in the world, but it is still very good, and you can get those for cheap on Amazon as well. If you want to, as far as your editing software, you can certainly upgrade. You don't have to at this tier. You could still do the iMovie or Windows Movie Maker. Both are still adequate to do most jobs for a very simple edit. But if you wanted to upgrade, the software that I would suggest is either Final Cut Pro if you're on the Mac system, or if you're on the PC system, you can go with Adobe Premiere. One of the great things about Final Cut, it is more expensive. It's a couple $100, but one of the great things about it is that once you own it and you don't have to pay again. The difference with Adobe Premiere is you literally pay every single month. So if you don't have the money up front, you can get Adobe Premiere for a much smaller amount, but you're going to be locked in monthly to pay for that. So it depends on your preference as far as budgeting is concerned. Let's move on to our higher budget now. It's actually the camera that I shoot most of my videos on today. I recommend one of two cameras. So the first camera is a Canon 5D Mark IV. It's a much more expensive, costs a couple $1,000s. And the other camera body is the one that I use right now, is a Sony a7R III. Each of these cameras run a few $1,000s, but they produce a very great picture. They have a better autofocus. They have a much nicer assortment of lenses and things like that. And so it's a great suggestion if you have the budget, if you have the money to spend on it. Again, it's not required, but it's helpful. As far as audio is concerned, you can do one of two things. You can stick with one of the lower tier boom mics that you want. There are other microphones that I could suggest, like the Video Mic Pro, or if you want a wireless lavalier microphone because you want to shoot in public places where it's a little bit louder. One that I've used is the Filmmaker Kit by Rode as well. As far as lighting is concerned, what I would suggest is to grab a couple of these guys. These are what are called soft boxes, and you can actually get them for pretty cheap on Amazon as well. I personally have 3 of these guys, and each of them goes for about $60 a piece. They have these nice white screens that help diffuse the light, and then on the inside is just several bulbs. Not so much fun to look at when you're videoing, but they're very, very bright and they do a great job of filling in the light. So if you get a couple of those, you can spend less than $200 or so to get really good lights. As far as software is concerned for editing, again, Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere all works good. You can obviously mix and match different pieces from different tiers to meet your budget, to meet your requirements. Some of you guys, especially if you work with a church, you might already have audio equipment. You might already even have lighting equipment. And so it's very, very reasonable for the average ministry or church to be able to get started with this with, I want to say, somewhere in the realm of about $1,000. You can get really, really good quality and you'll be fine. It's interesting now with the emerging of the smartphone and social media, in a certain respect, video quality has never been more important because we now have 4K, we have 8K, we have all these different kinds of like really nice cameras and things like that. It's super important. But in another sense, in a different sense, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, quality has never been less important as well. It's still very important, but it's also like completely not important at all. And the reason why is because we've gotten accustomed to viewing content on our smartphone day after day, moment by moment, that is really, really low quality. What matters more now is not so much the quality of the video as much as is the actual message and the value that you bring to the audience. And I'll give you a couple examples. We're going to watch a handful of videos that have blown up over the last couple of years. Let's see how many of you guys remember a few of these videos.
Here's what I found when I was at Kohl's, and I'd like to say that I bought this for my son that would really, really want it. And let's be honest, he'll probably confiscate it from me. Confiscate? That's a word, right? Okay, so he'll probably take it from me. However, this is mine. Like, when it's said and done, at the end of the day, this is mine that I bought. And I'm going to keep it for my own. I got to take off my glasses for it. Oh, naturally. Okay, here we go. Oh my gosh, I'm in tears. Wow.
I feel funny.
Kind of felt good, didn't it?
Is this real life?
Yeah, this is real life.
Okay, now I have 2 fingers.
Good.
No, 4 fingers.
4 fingers? No, don't put it in your mouth. Okay? You feel good?
I can't see anything.
Yes, you can. Stay in your seat. You don't? No?
Do I have stitches?
Uh-huh.
Do I have stitches
Yes.
on my teeth?
Yeah. Don't touch it. Don't.
Why can't I touch it?
Because it'll mess up the stitches.
You have 4 eyes.
Yeah.
I feel funny. Why is this happening to me?
It's okay, bud. It's just from the medicine. Okay?
Is this going to be forever?
No. No, it won't be forever.
Oh.
Charlie. Charlie bit me. Ah. Ah. Oh, ouch. Ouch. Ouch, Charlie. Ow! Charlie, that really hurt. No, Charlie bit me. And that really hurt, Charlie, and it's still hurting.
So there you guys have it. Several videos. All of these videos have gotten multiple millions upon millions upon millions of views, right? Just massive engagement, massive reach, just really just impacting a large number of people. And yet, the common denominator with pretty much all of these videos was that they were simply shot on an iPhone or a similar smartphone. You know, they were done as a selfie. They're just in the moment. There wasn't any production level, production value around it, but it was, people loved it because it spoke to them on an entertainment level. It was educational. It might have been inspirational. All these videos had a specific value. And when it comes to growing a YouTube channel, when it comes to really making an impact with your content, this is what really matters. It's not the quality, it's not the production value behind it. You're watching this video, chances are you might even only be listening. You might not even be watching the picture or caring about the lightings. You're watching this because the content speaks to you and actually helps meet a need that you actually have. So the question that we really ought to be focusing on as we're moving forward, we can settle the gear question and be done with it. Let's move past it. But the question that we really want to be thinking about is, what kind of value are we bringing the viewer? Are we entertaining? Are we engaging? Are we educating? Are we inspiring? Is the story that we're sharing, is it relatable or not? And that's really what matters. You talk to any filmmaker, they'll say, you know what, give me an iPhone and a good story, and I'll be way happier than the best camera and nothing to talk about. And so that's what I want to challenge you to be thinking about. Gear is important, but it's not the most important thing. So get your gear to begin with, and if you need to slowly upgrade over time, you can easily sell your camera after a couple months of using it, upgrade it, and then basically continue to develop your equipment that you have available to you. The thing that we want to put the majority of our focus and our attention towards, and this is really what the rest of this series is going to be all about. We're not going to talk about gear anymore. The thing that we want to focus about is two things. Number one, content. What are we going to be talking about? And number two is marketing. They say that content is king, but marketing is queen. And so we're going to be talking about marketing. How do we strategically position our content? How do we have a marketing strategy that is effective so we can actually reach people? If I had one of two options, if I had the option of having like the most professional setup, the nicest cameras, the best lighting, all that kind of stuff, but my videos only reached 5 people or 10 people, compared to if I had to shoot every video on my phone for the rest of my life, but I could reach 1 million people, which of those two would I prefer? It all comes down at the end of the day to what do I believe in, what do I value most? And as a Christian creator, the thing that I value the most is simply this, the message. The message, again, is what matters. The message is what changes people's lives. So don't allow this, all these other questions about gear and things like that, don't allow that to bog you down. Focus on our message and what are the strategies that we can use to get that message out there. We'll be talking more about that in our next video, commandment number 3, which is thou shalt have a clearly defined target market. Hopefully that video was helpful for you. Let me know if you have any other questions. Send me an email if you have questions about gear or anything else like that, and I will see you in the next video. God bless.